Well, the Muslim Council of Rome. My question is directed at Daniel Pipes. In your presentation today, sir, and also in a recent article in the Jerusalem Post about 3 weeks ago, you argued that having defeated the fascists and communists, the West must now defeat the Islamists. You argue that the West may find this a difficult battle to win, and among the reasons why you say this is because Islam deploys formidable capabilities, among which, and I quote your article verbatim, you include a non-violent approach, what I call lawful Islamism, that pursues Islamification through educational, political, and religious means, without recourse to illegality or terrorism. Lawful Islamism is proving successful in Muslim majority countries like Algeria and Muslim minority ones like the United Kingdom. You conclude, should Islamists get smart and avoid mass destruction, but instead stick to the lawful, political, non-violent route, and should their movement remain vital, it is difficult to see what will stop them. So let's be clear about what you're saying here, sir. You're not saying that it's only terrorist or violent groups that are unacceptable, but those who practice or advocate Islam by means which you yourself characterize as lawful, political, and non-violent are also part of this threat and also unacceptable.
Okay.
Indeed.
Sorry to interrupt, but I want to give as much time for questions as possible. He's making the point that can you sum it up in one quick sentence?
Contrary to what you were saying today, which is that the West should be fighting these Islamists who are bent on destruction, you actually, in the Jerusalem Post, were arguing that we should be fighting even those Muslims who are using a peaceful route, arguing their cause through education and politics. People like Salman Yaqub, who's elected, by the way, democratically, they should be fought as well. What kind of democracy are you really keeping?
I believe, as you heard, that Islamism is a totalitarian movement. It is a movement that, like its predecessors, can use different means to acquire power. Need I point out that Adolf Hitler reached power through democratic means. The ballot box does not guarantee that the victor is a Democrat, is a fine person. One sees a variety of ways that, for example, the communist movement used, be it Stalin at one end or an Italian Communist Party at the other. But they all, although they had different means, had the same goal of a communist classless society. So I would reject that, and I would reject the Sharia society that Islamists desire, whether they try and achieve it lawfully or through illegality, criminality, and terrorism. The means to attain this ghastly goal matter to me less than the goal itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Just wait for the mic for you.
Dr. Irfan Alawi, International Director of Center for Islamic Tourism. A question for the Mayor. What do you know the essence of Islam, in particular the Tablighi Jamaat, which we have operating in the United Kingdom and has close ties with Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jamaat-e-Islami to Pakistan, and has many times been involved with Saudi-backed funding of extremism? There has been significant related to 7/7. Majority of the people who have been arrested, who have been investigated to the 7/7 have, all of them have come from related to Tabligh Jamaat or Deoband, not from the mainstream Sunni Muslims. Thank you.
I don't have the slightest doubt that we need to mobilise every resource in terms of intelligence and policing to prevent anybody, irrespective of what organisation they're in, taking life. What worries me is the role of the West has been very often in building up those fanatics who now take life here. We had the CIA spend £500 million a year in the 1980s in Afghanistan to build up extreme Islamists as long as they were killing the Russians. That money was matched by the Saudi World Bank. And when the Russians went home, those people turned to look, who else is occupying Muslim lands? The same problem has now arisen in Iran. Our completely illegal war in Iran, which has only ever been about controlling oil, has created a breeding ground for terrorism. And when eventually some form of peace comes to Iraq, those people who've been trained to kill will disperse to the four corners of the earth. So what I argue for is our foreign policy should actually support those people who do share our values. The reality is, throughout the Cold War and in the years that followed, there's no honourable basis for the foreign policy that America and, sadly, Britain has pursued will support anybody, irrespective of where they stand in democracy. And this is not unique about the Muslim world. The West supported dictators in Indonesia and in Zaire. All we ask is that they allowed us access to their raw materials and they crushed their own socialist and communist and trade union dissidents. And so I remember one thing, that when we had the first invasion, when the invasion of Kuwait happened, the Iranian news agency broadcast a statement saying, Saddam Hussein has turned on his creators. And that is exactly what happened. When Saddam Hussein came to power, he wasn't denounced by the West. The CIA gave him a list of communists for him to kill, and MI6 gave him a list of trade unionists for him to kill. And I will actually point out my role in this. I've always supported progressive elements. I welcome Qaradawi here because he represents the strongest force for the modernisation of Islam. He doesn't agree with me. He doesn't agree with me about homosexuality, but it's only in the last 50 years the majority of legislators in this country agree with me about homosexuality. We were still sending homosexuals to prison 50 years ago. We had to fight for that. And I didn't, when we saw a radical force for change come out of the Catholic Church with the election of John the 23rd, the world didn't say, we can't deal with John the 23rd because he's not going to be on a gay rights demo. We welcomed that he was the most progressive pope in 100 years, and he opened up the church to engagement and dialogue. And I will continue to disagree with Qaradawi, but I recognise he is the future of Islam, and it is the reactionary elements of Islam, it is the Saudi royal family and others that do everything possible to undermine his teaching for engagement with the West.
Getting over there with the glasses, sir. Just wait for the microphone and do the mic. Yes, sir, gentlemen.